Hello, everybody. It's Tuesday night. It's 7 o'clock, and we are live. Hello, everybody. It's Tuesday night. It's 7 o'clock, and we are live. Welcome to V-Talks. I'm your host, Veronica Brockwell. Well, our guest tonight claims that he can predict longevity by using predictive biomarkers. And I'm so excited to hear how he is going to tell us how he is able to do this. And since it's the last Tuesday of the month, you know who I'm talking about. He is a functional medicine doctor, a chiropractic physician, and a certified inflammation and detoxification specialist. And I'm always glad to see our favorite Dr. Michael Wild.
Hello there.
And his dog, Ralphie.
Yeah, Ralphie always has to be in my lap, so I apologize. He's not, well, I guess now he's officially a member of the show.
He's officially a member of the show, and let's just look at your matching haircuts. You both got haircuts.
I think his is a little cuter than mine, but yeah, we got haircuts for the show.
He is so cute. I can't. Look at those eyes. Gorgeous.
Thank you. Oh, okay.
Yes. So hello, how are you?
I'm doing really well. How about you?
I'm well. Last time we spoke, you had just gotten back from Alaska visiting your daughter, and that was a fun trip.
That was an awesome trip. It really was. 3 very fun-filled days. Took me a full day to get there. Hung out with her for 3 days and a full day to get back. But we packed a lot of adventure into 3 days, and it was really, really cool.
Oh, I'm so glad. Well, we're really glad to have you here this evening. And I'm very curious about learning about the predictive biomarkers. Tell us what that's all about.
So as the name implies, predictive biomarkers means biomarkers are the things that we measure when we look at lab tests, things in your blood and your urine. Those are called biomarkers, right? Okay. Predictive biomarkers are predicting the outcome, in this case, of your life expectancy. Okay. So there are certain biomarkers that we know correlate extremely strongly with a shorter or longer lifespan. Okay. And some of the things we're going to talk about tonight, everyone's heard of before, but had no idea that they actually correlated with how long they were going to live. And some things we're going to talk about are probably things that you never heard of before. Okay. So I'm going to go over just a few of these. I think we're going to go over 5 or 6 of these. There are others that you could look at, but these are probably the most important ones to look at that really jump out. And if they're not good, they raise a big red flag to tell us that, hey, you're on a course for a short life. Okay. So we want to turn that around. And that's the beauty of looking at predictive biomarkers is they're not written in stone, right? I mean, you can change these things by changing what you're doing to yourself through what you're eating, primarily through your lifestyle. We'll talk a little bit about that. That will actually then extend your life expectancy if your numbers don't look good.
All right. Well, this sounds great. So let's get to it.
Okay. So the first thing we're going to talk about is why would all these things we're going to talk about be involved with your life expectancy in the first place? And one of the main things, and I know you've heard me speak about this many times before, is all these things are related to something called chronic inflammation. Yeah. Now, chronic inflammation, well, let's take a step back for a second. What is inflammation? We'll do a brief recap. So inflammation is a process by which your body responds to a stimulus, typically what we consider to be a negative stimulus, like an injury or an infection, some type of damage, some type of attack. And that inflammation is a chemical cascade that occurs in your immune system to promote the fight back, right? To prompt the immune system to kick into gear to repair any damage that might be happening someplace in the body or to fight off a foreign invading organism. So obviously
it's important.
It's important, right?
Yeah, we need that.
Inflammation you die, right?
Sure.
Pretty quickly.
Right.
So that short-term reaction where the immune system kicks in, heals the wound, or fights off the bad guy, that's called acute inflammation. And that's good inflammation. We want that. We want it to get started, do its job, and then we want it to cut off and go away.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that sometimes it doesn't cut off. And that inflammation keeps coming and keeps coming. And then that becomes too much of a good thing, becomes a bad thing, where that starts to damage your cells on many different levels. Mm-hmm. And that's what these markers are kind of telling us about, mm-hmm. is in part about the damage that chronic inflammation may be causing to your cells. And if it reaches a certain level, we know once you cross that threshold, you're now decreasing the life expectancy of the cell, which in turn is the life expectancy of your body, right?
Okay.
So your body is made up of all these cells. So if you do anything to damage the cells and slow down their healing and repair or overwhelm them, you're going to increase the development of disease and shorten the life expectancy of the cells, the tissues, the organs and glands, the systems, and ultimately you, right? So what we want to talk about is inflammation. Now, we know that inflammation by itself creates damage to cells. But the newer thinking about inflammation, and we call it inflammation rethought, is that not only does it cause damage, but one of the main things that inflammation is doing is it's actually preventing repair. So when inflammation causes a different chemical cascade to occur over time because it's become chronic, and chronic, by the way, means technically anything lasting over 3 months. Okay, so if you have that chronic shoulder injury where you're in pain all the time, it's been going on for years, arthritis, someone with diabetes already has a compromised immune system, they have a wound that maybe won't heal, keeps coming back over and over, they have to go to the wound specialist. These types of things are definitive examples of chronic inflammation that you can feel, that you can see. But the chronic inflammation is 99% of it you don't feel and don't see. It's happening on the inside. It's called a silent killer. And that's because it's interfering with the cell's ability to repair. It's interfering with the immune system's ability to actually get the job done. So when it stays on like that, it actually starts to weaken and it can no longer do the repair it was supposed to do. And so the cells are going to die off faster, right?
Yeah, so you're saying you might not feel a thing.
Exactly, right. You may not ever know it's happening, which is exactly why I have on my website, right, which is drweilcanhelp.com. You see it right down there right now, right? If you go to my website, right on the first page of that, I have an online questionnaire that you can take. It's a very easy quiz. You click that button, takes you right to it. And there's one that tells you all about chronic inflammation to find out, do you have hidden inflammation that you may not even realize you did, right? There's another quiz there about toxicity, but that's a topic that we've already covered and something we can go over again another time. But if you're curious to know, do I have this happening inside me? Take the quiz. It's free. It's fast. In 5 minutes, there's a key. It'll automatically do the math for you. You don't even have to add it up. And you can actually rank yourself and see where you stand in the inflammatory cascade. And I also then have some recommendations for you of what you can do to follow up and get some help for that. All right. Now, some of the more common things that chronic inflammation causes that people may not realize: diabetes, autoimmune diseases, when your immune system attacks your own tissues, and there are over 150 of those.
Yeah.
Arthritis of both the autoimmune kind, like rheumatoid and psoriatic, and the wear and tear kind, like osteoarthritis, cardiac diseases, cancer of any kind, lung diseases, pulmonary diseases, dementia and brain diseases like Alzheimer's, other neurological diseases, and even direct brain diseases like prion disease, like mad cow disease, is related to inflammation in the brain cells. So all these things are things that probably either ourselves might be suffering from, or at least we know one other person who probably is, right?
Well, it's interesting. You're talking about autoimmune. There are so many people with autoimmune conditions now that I know. And I don't know if they're just being diagnosed now more than they were before. They have different testing, or if there's just an increase in inflammation.
Well, I think it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
I think we're getting better at recognizing it and diagnosing it, but I think that truly there's something in the water, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
The environment has become more and more and more toxic.
Yeah.
In this world we're living in. And that certainly does lead to a significant stress in your immune system that does trigger an autoimmune response, because your immune system is basically getting scrambled by a lot of the toxins we are involved with, among some other things. Give you an idea of something in the water, and this is something you folks can do at home too. The EWG, Environmental Working Group, if you go to the EWG's website, they put out things like the Dirty Dozen and Clean 15. You may have heard that before. The Dirty Dozen is the foods that year that have the most pesticides and herbicides on them. They list it because it changes, so that you might want to always buy those things organic and make sure you clean them off before you eat them. Then the Clean 15 are those foods that have the least amount that might be okay to buy commercial, right? So if you're picking where to spend your dollars. Well, they also have a page on their website where you can put in your zip code and they'll tell you what toxins are in your water.
Really?
And it's scary, let me tell you. So I did that for my own water here at my home in the city of Richmond. I also did it in Henrico County where my office is. And in both cases, at my office, there were 10 contaminants above safe levels. At my home water, there were 21. And some of them were 400% higher than the government allowance for cancer-causing chemicals in my tap water.
And who's monitoring that?
Apparently no one, right? So the EWG is looking at it because our water filtration and treatment plants are not designed to filter these chemicals out. There are more and more chemicals being put into the environment every day, hundreds more every day. And the systems we have to monitor this stuff or to clean it out simply can't keep up, right? Even the EPA only tests a handful, literally like 3 to 5 new drugs or chemicals, I should say, in the environment each year to see if they're safe. And there are thousands coming out each year, thousands, right? There are over 150,000 known chemicals in the environment right now, man-made, right? So the bottom line is no one's really keeping up with this, all right? But the EWG is looking for it to let you know, hey, do you think maybe a really high quality purification system would be a good idea before you drank that water, right? And I'm a big fan of reverse osmosis amongst many other stages, carbon block, coconut fiber, but reverse osmosis takes out the most chemicals out of your water. So the system I use has a 4-stage filtration system, and I'm not ever drinking the tap water, right?
Yeah.
So,
I have well water here.
And well water can be just as dangerous, right? Because what's seeping into the ground, what's being sprayed on the farmland up the road that's going to the shared water table, right? What's happening with the chemical plant runoff or the plastics residue that's going into our rivers and going to the tributaries and going underground and becoming the water that you drink, right?
Right.
So this stuff needs to be tested, and at the bare minimum, if you don't test it, protect yourself, right?
Sure.
You know, and let me tell you, a Brita filter or a refrigerator filter isn't going to cut it.
No, it doesn't sound it.
All right.
It doesn't.
Those are okay for taking out the contaminants that make water taste funny, but they're not simply strong enough to take out these truly toxic things. You need a reverse osmosis system really to do that, or RO, as it's called. But the good news is that while those systems were thousands and thousands of dollars in just the recent past, they've come down to like you can get a under sink unit or a countertop unit for $300 to $400 now, right?
Oh, that's
which is not
great.
chump change, but when you think about, well, what's the cost of cancer care?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Or what's the cost to your life quality or expectancy, as we're talking about tonight?
Sure.
So that was a little bit of a tangent, but only simply to say that, hey, you're exposed to a lot more than you realize you are that are causing these inflammatory changes in your cells, right? And that's just one example. There's so much we could talk about there, right? So I want to talk about what can we measure?
Yeah.
What's good, what's bad, and a little bit about what can you do about it, right?
Okay.
Right. So first things first, let's talk about something I've also talked about before with you, which is omega-3 fatty acids, right? Now, you may have heard of omega-3s. These are an essential fatty acid, which means that your body cannot make all omega-3s. You have to get some from your diet. Your body can make a certain kind of omega-3, but not another. So you can't make something called LA or ALA. You do make a little bit of DHA and EPA, but as we get older, it actually becomes more and more difficult to create those in our body. So it's a good idea to get them from your food sources or from supplement sources to get these levels up. A research study that was out of Hospital Del Mar Medical Research Institute. Where exactly that was, I'm trying to remember. It was printed in Science Daily, was the journal. But there was a study done in 2021 that it was interesting because they were looking at one of the correlations they found in the cases of COVID was some people were having a mild case, some people were having a more severe case, right? So we're looking for commonalities of what would help someone's immune system maybe work better to help people have a mild case versus a severe case. And one of the things they measured, because they found across the board that people who had really severe cases or ended up in the ICU or even died, across the board, they had really low omega-3 fatty acids.
That's what happened to me.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm seemingly healthy, right?
That's right. I almost forgot about that. We were talking about your test results, and I said, you know what? You're at great risk. And the next day, you were in the hospital.
Well, yeah, but I had COVID that night, and I didn't know.
Didn't even know it, right?
I was in the hospital. I was very, very sick.
I know.
I don't mean to laugh because it's not funny, but you just, and they said that my omega-3s were very low because I don't eat a lot of foods that have that in them. And I was taking regular vitamins, but I wasn't supplementing specifically the omega-3s.
It's one of the most important things you can get. And there are plant sources and animal sources. The animal sources are basically oily fish.
Yeah.
You can get an algae, flax, chia. If you already have healthy levels and you want to just maintain them, that's easily done with ground flax or ground chia. You can't eat a whole flax seed or chia seed and actually extract that from. As a matter of fact, that's very hard to digest. It ends up just kind of going through you.
Oh, yeah.
So when you see breads that have flax and chia thrown in there, if they're not ground up, you're not really getting the health benefit of that. That's almost more a marketing thing.
But do you have to grind it like fresh, or can it be
fresh is best
and sit
fresh
there?
Is best.
Does it lose its nutrients after it's been ground over time?
It does. Yeah. So as oxygen comes in contact with it, we start to oxidize and break down the nutrients. And we're going to talk a bit more about oxidation as we go on tonight. But yes, you just like kind of grinding your coffee. If you want the most benefit of the antioxidants and phenolic compounds from coffee, you should grind your own freshly and then use it rather than getting the pre-ground, because as that just kind of eliminates or emanates into the air, it starts to lose its antioxidant properties with that.
And it tastes so good.
It does.
It really
so
does.
Yeah, I get
but it's hard to have
coffee.
time. It's hard to have time to do it, but yeah, it tastes amazing.
Well, not really. I mean, if you think about it, it literally takes like 2 extra minutes. If you have a little grinder, pop your beans in there, pour in. I mean, how long does that take, right? So it's well worth the benefit of it. And I want to put a plug here to say only use organic coffee beans, right? Because talked about toxins, coffee beans are some of the most heavily pesticide and herbicide laden foods that we ingest. So you always want to get organic. Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So you always want to get organic when you can, so it's not pesticides and herbicides used on those. All right.
Okay.
And then grind them yourself. That'd be ideal with a little grinder. It literally takes a couple of minutes, cheap little electric grinder, and then make your coffee from that. That's really the best way to go. All right. So jumping back to this study in 2021, they were looking at that correlation with omega-3s, and they found that anyone below the chart kind of goes from, say, 0 up to 12. 8 and above is considered normal. 10 and above is considered really healthy, right? Below 8, you're going to start having challenges. Your cells are going to start having challenges. If the omega-3 level isn't correct, it's omega-3s are anti-inflammatory and protective. So if that's too low, your protection goes down, right? Your resistance and resilience are affected. It also affects the ability for nutrients to get in and waste to get out. So that's a problem, right? If you can't get good stuff in and bad stuff out, we got a problem, right? And it also affects the ability of your cells to hear hormones and chemical messengers in your body and properly respond, right? So if you're having hormone problems, fat metabolism problems, menopausal problems, sexual hormone problems, stress hormone problems, it could be that your cell membranes can't hear the hormones properly. And that is highly dependent upon omega-3 status, among some other things, right? So all this stuff's really important. So they found that if you were below 5.72, you were very likely to have a bad case of COVID. And not just because this relates only to COVID, but because it relates to any kind of infection, really, right? So if your numbers are down, your resistance is down, bottom line. And what they found in this study was that for every 1% increase of your omega-3s, you had a significant increase in your life expectancy that was equal to that of the number of years of quitting smoking.
Wow.
Right? Yeah, pretty dramatic, right? And we've all seen those cool kind of things where they talk about if you quit smoking today, in 1 week, there's this much repair. In 1 month, there's this much repair. It takes a whole year for this to be better, another year for this to be better. Well, your omega-3 status is just like that. If it's too low, it's as if you're smoking a pack a day or more, right? Depending on what your number is. Okay. So real important to get that omega-3 status up. So how you do that? Eat oily fish, right? That's one really easy way to do that. So what are the best oily fish for this? There's
I know.
What?
Wild salmon.
That's one of them.
Wild salmon.
Yep. That's absolutely one of them.
Has to be wild.
So we don't like farm-raised fish because they do lots of bad things to the farm-raised fish. They genetically modify them to get these omega-3 numbers up, which sounds good, but they do so many bad things to them in the process that it actually creates more problems for us. They shoot them up with all kinds of chemicals. They force feed them grains that are inflammatory and sprayed with other chemicals. When the fish die off, as they do, they actually feed the dead, decaying fish back to the other fish. Cannibalism, right? So it's kind of crazy in regards to the farm fish process. I'd rather go with wild caught. Now, that being said, God knows what's in our oceans anymore, right? But I'd rather take my chances with something that might still be okay versus something I know for sure is not.
And
right?
you can't get wild salmon on the East Coast. You can't fish for it here, so they have
I try to get the Arctic, right?
That's where I get mine shipped.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right. And frozen's fine, right? As long as
because they process it right there on the boat.
Right.
And
absolutely.
They freeze it. It's fresh, and then they ship it. Dry
exactly.
ice.
So that's the way to go for that. But there's an acronym we use, right? Called SMASH.
Oh,
and
I didn't have that written down.
That's okay. It's SMASH. SMASH.
All right.
The first S is salmon. The M is mackerel.
Oh.
The A is anchovies. The next S is sardines, and the H is herring, right? So those are some of your top foods, and trout is pretty good too, right? So those are going to be your highest concentration of two kinds of omega-3s that are really important for improving your cell membrane health, which is called DHA and EPA. All right. And those are what you get from that. And you also get some of that from flax and chia. You also can get it from algae if you're vegan, right? So there are algae supplements you can get for that too. And just so I can let everybody know, if anybody wants some information about like my favorite sources or what's a good kind to get, I'd be happy to share information with you. I do that for all my patients. I have a little link I send you that has my 4 favorites that I would tell you to get. Okay. So reach out to me if you would like, and you can do that through drwildcanhelp.com. You can, contact me through my Facebook group, which I also encourage you to join. It's called Restore Your Health Online. So if you go to Facebook and go to the groups and look up Restore Your Health Online with Dr. Wild, it's a free Facebook group where I give cellular healing tips every week. I dropped a new tip this morning. Every Tuesday, I give a written tip. Every Thursday, I do a video explaining, kind of like we're doing now, but in a shorter version, how you can use that tip in your life, right? Completely free. I'm here to help and give information. You can also join that group, reach out to me in that group, and I'll send you a link to my favorite fish oil choices.
And yeah, because you do this all the time on there. You're on
I
there
do.
live,
I do, right?
for, 10
This
minutes, 15 minutes,
exactly. So
talking
this
about little different topics.
our meetings are the extended version, right?
Yeah.
So for someone who wants the deep dive, but I just started that group a little while ago because I realized that people ask me kind of the same questions very often, and it would be great if I could just kind of get that out to larger groups of people at once, and if I could just talk about things that are new and upcoming and interesting, kind of like this. I did a whole series on predictive biomarkers, right? And because you're a member of the group, and I think that's actually what prompted you to say, "Hey, let's talk more about that." Right?
That's exactly right. You'll come, you'll have a topic on there, and I'll say, "Hey, we need to put that on VTalks. That's really interesting." Yeah,
Absolutely.
I'm definitely a member of your group. I'm your patient. So
Cool. And I like that,
yeah,
right? And this is not
yeah,
just my patients, though, right? It's for anybody. It's a free group, right?
yeah. It's
It's
great.
something that I just want to give back to the world. I think that God put me here for a purpose, and I'm trying to live that purpose. And that purpose is, the term doctor means teacher, right?
Yeah.
So I'm trying to teach. I'm trying to teach you how to save your cells so you can save yourself, right? Because that's ultimately what it comes down to. So talking about teaching, let's get back into it.
Let's
All
do
right.
it.
So the next thing I want to talk about is vitamin D,
Yes.
right? I think maybe a few of you have heard about vitamin D before, right? And we did a whole topic on that, right? So you can go back and search up that V-Talks if you'd like, but we talked over an hour about vitamin D. But long story short, like omega-3, researchers found that people with the highest vitamin D levels were nearly 3 times more likely to outlive those with the lowest vitamin D levels, right? And when you talk about vitamin D, the range goes from 30 to 100. And the most acceptable level we're looking for is that 50 to 80 range. I really like 75, right? So your average doctor won't tell you that your vitamin D is low until you're approaching 30 on that
Right.
scale. They won't tell you it's deficient unless you're under 30. And that's really bad.
And what do you say to folks that say, "Oh, my vitamin D is fine. I'm out in the sun all the time."
So, and that may be true. So have you had it tested? Do we know what those
Right.
numbers really are? Right? Because
Right.
if you don't test it, you have no idea what your
No.
vitamin D level is, right? So sun exposure is one of the ways in which we get vitamin D. We also get it from certain foods, right? But we do know that our body absorbs healthy rays from the sun. It's called heliotherapy, right? Helio means sun. And that is one of the things that our body does with that sun is convert into vitamin D, which is extremely important to our immune function, not just for bones, right? It's really important for our immune system. It's if you think of your immune system as your body's army, and your white blood cells are the foot soldiers and scouts and the guys on the ground doing the fighting. The vitamin D is basically the general that's commanding that army, right? It's actually a steroid hormone. And I won't go into too much detail about that because we did a whole hour on it, but it directs the function of your immune system and it goes directly into your cells, right to the genetic material and makes changes inside your cells. So vitamin D is really, really important.
And if you're outside and you're wearing sunglasses and sunscreen and you're
Right,
fully clothed,
gonna
what
get to that.
happens?
So if you're in the sun, in order to make vitamin D, you have to have your skin exposed without either sunscreen or clothing covering it, right?
Right.
So if you're in an area of the world that has a pretty strong amount of sun rays, right, above the equator, I'm sorry, below the equator for more sun rays, it doesn't take nearly as much as it does if you're above the equator, right? So if you're below the equator, if you're exposing the majority of your torso, like if you're a man with your shirt off, a woman with a bikini top on, outside for just 10 minutes, you've created enough vitamin D to meet your needs for that day, right? Now, if you're above the equator, like we are, right, it takes quite a bit more than that. It would take about 30 minutes of exposure, even in the summer sun in many places, right? So most of us are not spending that much time every day with our clothes off outside unless we are a part of a nudist colony, right?
Yeah. And in the
So,
winter too.
and in the winter too, right?
Like
So
folks, you can't like I'm up way up north.
exactly. And
So I can promise you, we're not doing anything out like that in March.
And I'm all for being out in the sun.
Yeah.
I get out in the sun as much as I can, and I don't really wear sunscreen. I try to gauge my exposure, so my body can naturally produce the the melanin to be able to protect my body from that, because the sunscreen contains many chemicals that have been found to cause skin cancer, right? So there's kind of a damage.
What do we do?
Right. So one of the better ways you can do it is to increase your internal sunscreen with polyphenols. Oh, I don't know if you see this, but like my visual just slowed down like really bad.
Yes, and Ralphie is perfectly posed right there.
Look at that. Now I'm not even talking. It's catching up. Weird stuff coming from my camera. Maybe my internet went out.
Yeah.
Okay. Almost caught up. All right. So I might do that Chinese movie thing. Okay. We'll see what's going on here.
The Mothra movies. Do you remember
Yes.
those? Remember those? We're dating ourselves now. I used to love those. Madura. All right.
Okay. Enough stupidity. All right.
I even know the songs. Do you remember the little twins that would sing the Mothra song?
Oh, I do.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Where was I? We were talking about vitamin D. We're talking about sun. We're talking about sunscreen. Oh, so internal sunscreen. Yeah. So when you eat certain foods, especially vegetables that are red or orange, they contain things like lutein and lycopene and astaxanthin that help to protect your skin and your eyes from the inside. It's like a natural sunscreen.
Okay. So can you give me some examples?
Tomatoes.
Okay.
Right. Peppers.
Okay.
Right. So these things have basically your fruits or vegetables that are red or orange.
Okay.
Tend to have those. If you're going to use sunscreen, you want to use as clean of a sunscreen as possible. And that's at EWG, Environmental Working Group, has a whole list of that as well.
Okay.
So you can go right to their website and say, show me clean sunscreens, and it'll rank them from the least possible damaging to don't buy this stuff. Right.
Sure.
So just go by that rank because it changes all the time. So I could throw stuff out there, like the Honest Company makes some good stuff. Things that actually have zinc dioxide as a physical barrier to the sun. Remember the old lifeguards who put the white zinc?
Yeah.
Right? Because it's a physical barrier to the sun. The sun's rays cannot get through that. So if you have certain areas that you want to protect, like here and here, while you're wearing a hat, but you have exposed spots, stick some of that stuff on there. And now they even make clear versions of that.
Oh, do they?
Yeah. So those are better choices for that. Okay. All right. So we talked about omega-3s. We talked about vitamin D.
Mm-hmm.
And man, my camera's doing it again. Tell you what, I'm going to try real quick, if I may, just switch this camera off and go to a different camera.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
Okay.
No worries.
Let me do this real quick because this is driving me crazy. I'm not sure what's going on here. All right.
No, it's fine. I had technical difficulties last week myself with my my audio. So, all right.
All right. Let me see. I stopped my camera. Let me go to my settings. Let me switch that real quick. Let me restart my camera. Am I back?
Yes, you are.
Okay. All right. I'm back. So the quality's not quite as good, but at least my mouth matches my words.
Exactly.
Okay. All right.
So we were talking about sunscreen and the zinc.
Right. Okay.
And then we moved on from there.
Yep. We're going to go on to the next thing we want to talk about, which is something I've talked about in the past as well. I'm locked up again. What's going on? It must be my internet.
It is. Do you have your Ethernet cord plugged into your router?
No, I do not. I always do that, and I didn't do it tonight.
See?
Shame on me.
I always tell people you have to plug into your router. You can't.
And I always do. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine. Just try to freeze up on a smile, and then it'll be cool. Just be like.
Well, I don't know what I'm doing right there, but okay, look at that.
It's not the best, but we can keep going with the show.
All right, I'll tell you what. Should I just turn the camera off and just talk so I'm not disturbing people with these strange faces?
I don't know. I think you should just keep it as it is, and we'll
All right.
keep it going. We'll zip it up. We have another, what, 20 minutes?
Yeah, so I'll just keep on going. And you've
Yeah,
completely
just keep
frozen
on
on my
going.
screen.
Oh,
All right.
nice. I hope it's nice.
You have a lovely smile. I'm not sure what's going on.
That's great.
All right. So the next thing we're going to talk about is
next time you're gonna be plugged into your router, aren't you?
Yes, I am. I have my computer in a different place than I normally would have it when I'm doing these, because I was on a different consult call with someone, and so I don't have it plugged in for that.
Yeah, because this has never happened with you.
No, and I will not let it happen again. I apologize.
That's all right. We'll be all right.
On to the next thing. Homocysteine.
Oh, yeah. I hope I got that spelled correctly.
There you go.
Right?
Good job. Yes. So
people have no idea the stress right before we log on. They don't know.
The spelling stress. So homocysteine is a chemical built up in your body that's necessary, right? It's a protein molecule that is involved with kind of the matrix between different levels of soft or layers of tissues within your body. So it builds up, for example, inside the walls of your arteries, between the layers, right? So if you picture your arteries are a tube, well, that tube is made up of all these different layers, right? And it's in between the layers in here. So it's not where the blood actually goes through the middle, but it's in the layers. Okay. And when you have too much homocysteine, it creates a speed bump that builds up and eventually ruptures the inside of the lining of your blood vessel. And when that happens, then cholesterol rushes in to try to repair that, because cholesterol is a fireman, comes in to put out the fire, filling in the pothole, trying to repair the tear there. But when that happens, and we have that combination between the two of high homocysteine and more cholesterol trying to fix that little tear, then that cholesterol can start to combine with oxygen and oxidize, right? And harden, and then chunks of that can break off and lead to a heart attack or stroke, right?
Is that ischemia?
So ischemia is when that vessel gets completely blocked, and then the blood vessel is shut off and an area doesn't get the blood. Okay. So that's an ischemic stroke, right? Okay. So technically, once this clot breaks off, if it gets to a small blood vessel and completely clogs it, yes, that's ischemia. Okay. All right. The other kind of stroke that people can have is a hemorrhagic stroke. And that's where if this homocysteine causes a rupture in a brain blood vessel, and before it gets repaired, the rupture gets so big that the blood all spills out, that's a hemorrhagic stroke, right? So homocysteine can be involved with either one of those, right? Okay. Now, every time you have an elevated homocysteine, you're elevating your risk of cardiovascular disease and stroke, right? And homocysteine develops if you don't have enough B vitamins.
Really? Okay.
So if you're getting good B vitamin status, and also your B vitamins are made in your body in your GI tract, right? So if your GI tract digestion isn't good and you have inflammation going on there, you have problems with your B vitamin status, all right? And if you have problems with B vitamin status, then homocysteine goes unchecked and starts to build up. Okay. So important two things here. You want to get B vitamins, right? And you want to make sure you have good digestion, a good GI tract.
And this is more than just taking a multivitamin every day.
Well, you can do that, right? But
it's better than nothing.
Right. And realize that most of your B vitamins in a multivitamin are synthetically derived from petroleum. So B vitamins are petroleum distillates. They're not really well metabolized by your body, which is why you end up peeing out a lot of them and your urine turns bright yellow, right? That's because a lot of it's flushing out because your body doesn't recognize it because it's actually coming from Vaseline, right? It's petroleum, all right? So that's not a great way to get your B vitamins. You can get B vitamins in their whole food form, which primarily is in actually nutritional yeast, and yeast flakes are a great source. There are actually 27 B vitamins Most people don't know that because they only see the top 5 in a B complex, right? But there are 27, and you only get that in a natural form, like from certain herbs or from nutritional yeast flakes. Okay.
What about IV infusions?
So infusions, depending on where you go, they may use synthetically derived or they may use whole natural form of the vitamins that they're giving you. When I go to the one that's near me, I ask about that, and they only use whole food forms of their vitamins, which is what I want because that's what my body recognizes. That's what's designed to recognize, right? It's not designed to absorb chemicals from the lab. It's designed to absorb phytonutrients and chemicals from the land, right? So that's what my cells recognize and know how to work with. So typically when you're getting vitamins in a whole food form, you actually need a lot less of them than you do in the synthetic form because you're using them a lot more. So 5 milligrams of whole food vitamin C from a red bell pepper is more effective in your body than 5,000 milligrams of synthetic ascorbic acid, for example. All right. So don't be alarmed if you're using a whole food based B vitamin and it shows like the levels seem really low. That's because you're using them a lot more. You don't need a lot, and you're actually being able to actively use them a lot better in your system.
Okay.
So homocysteine, we want to keep that down by getting adequate B vitamins. All right. The next thing we're going to talk about is hemoglobin A1C. Now, if you're a diabetic, you definitely know what this is about, right? Now, you may recognize that because some doctors do test that regularly in your blood work if you go in for a physical, but most doctors do not explain to the patient what it means or how it's related to predicting your mortality. Because certain things now, like we talked about how we could tell with omega-3s below a certain point, we had a much greater risk. Well, with hemoglobin A1C, it gets really specific that you can really predict very well your probability of living 10 years from the day you take that measurement, right? So what is hemoglobin A1C? Well, we describe as a measurement of your sugar, blood sugar over time. So you can go and get your daily glucose checked, and that's saying, here's my blood sugar today. And that normal range is typically between 80 and 100, right? We don't really want it going above that. And if you start going above that, they start saying you're pre-diabetic, or if it goes, if they say it's like, hey, 120, you're pre-diabetic. If it's like 130, 140, 150, you're diabetic. That is really, it's dependent upon what you ate that day and the day before, right? So if you know you're going to get your blood checked and you don't want the doctor to yell at you, you can be really careful about not eating things that convert to sugar, like simple carbohydrates, and not eating sweet things, and your blood sugar may look great that day.
Sure.
So you can try to fool them, right? But the hemoglobin A1C is a measurement of how the sugar has affected your cells over the last 2 or 3 months.
Oh, yeah. So you can't cheat there.
Cheat on, right?
Oh, no.
And what's actually measuring is how much cell destruction is occurring because you've had sugar in your bloodstream for so long. So when you have sugar in your bloodstream that your body can't utilize, so your sugar's already been absorbed and fed all your cells. The extra has already been absorbed into your muscles or your liver for future use. That's called glycogen. Once all those baskets are full and the sugar is still sitting there because you ate so much of it, then it starts to just float around the bloodstream and it starts to combine and wrap around the protein structures of your cells. That process is called glycation. And that glycation damages the cells. It destroys the cells. And hemoglobin A1C is measuring how much glycation is occurring.
Okay.
Right? So the higher this number, the more cells are dying. And the more cells are dying, the faster you're dying. Right? So you want this number to be below, you want to be around 5 to 5.5, right? Percent is what it is, 5 to 5.5. If your hemoglobin A1C is 5 to 5.5, even maybe up to 6, somewhere in that window, that 5 to 6, you have about a 90 to 99% chance of living 10 years past that time. Right? Pretty good.
Pretty good.
Now, for just about every percent that you go up, you take about 10 years off your life. Okay? So from 6 to 7, is about a 70 to 80% chance of living 10 years. Between 7 and 8 is like a 70% chance. Between 8 and 9, 60% chance. 9, 10 is 50% chance. 10, 11 is a 40 to 30% chance. 11 to 12 is a 20% chance. And greater than 12% hemoglobin A1C is less than a 10% chance of living 10 years past that point. Right? So this is a number you can easily measure, and you can easily tell if you're at risk of shortening your lifespan because of the choices you're making about what you put in your mouth.
Right.
Okay. So I think it's real important to know that number and to strive towards 5, right? Strive for 5, 99% chance of living 10 years or more. 12% or higher, less than 10% chance of living 10 years or more. Okay. So pretty important stuff there. All right. Let's talk about the next thing, which is another thing that most people probably have not heard of, which is called 8-OH-DG. Now, that stands for a chemical compound that I'm not even going to try to pronounce right now. But what it's telling us about is we talked before about oxidation, about when oxygen comes in contact with certain items in our bloodstream and starts creating damage, right? So oxidation is a necessary part of life. We need it. We need oxygen to combine with things. But just like we talked about inflammation becoming chronic and being there too long and becoming a problem, well, when oxidation gets to a certain level and stays there too long, it becomes damaging. And that oxidation causes something called free radical formation. And that's when your cells, if you get all the way down, break your cells all the way down to their atomic structure, right? The tiniest particles that we can recognize. And those atoms, if you remember back to chemistry class, right? They have electrons and neutrons and positrons rotating around that nucleus. And when electrons get removed, then that becomes kind of a rogue atom. It's like missing, like it ripped off my arm. And now I'm not only angry, but I'm looking for a new arm. Right? That's called a free radical. Yeah. And what a free radical does is he runs down the street and rips an arm off everyone he meets, trying to find one that fits him. Okay? So that
great analogy, Michael.
Right, becomes very, very damaging to everyone around him, right? So free radicals start to spread the damage to every cell around them. And that happens through a process called oxidation. And that's why we take certain vitamins like vitamin C, vitamin E as antioxidants. That is to stop that process because those vitamins help stop that process. So those are important, right? So 8-OH-DG is a measurement of how much of that oxidation is happening to your DNA. All right? To the very substance that tells your cells who they are. So your DNA, as you may be aware, are inside your cells. You have a nucleus in the center. In the center of that cell, in that nucleus, you have your genetic material, your DNA and RNA. RNA tells a cell how to reproduce itself. DNA tells a cell, this is what kind of cell you are. You're a heart cell, a liver cell, a muscle cell, a brain cell, right? Well, this number correlates with oxidative damage to your DNA. What do you think that oxidative damage does to your DNA, right? So now your cells are becoming confused about who they are or what their job is, and they start to morph into things they're not supposed to be. And we call that cancer.
Yeah.
Right?
And they replicate.
Right. Okay. So the DNA oxidative risk measured by 8-OH-DG, which is done in your urine, by the way, is another risk factor. The lowest levels of this, if it's below 5, gives you the highest probability of 10-year survival or greater. And if it's above 25, it gives you the lowest probability of 10-year survival or greater, and also is directly correlated with the development of rheumatoid arthritis, inflammatory bowel disease, Parkinson's, bladder and prostate cancer, pancreatitis, Alzheimer's, right? And the list goes on. So we see a very strong connection between damaging your DNA and developing these diseases, right? Now, these are not genetic diseases, but they are caused by damaging your genetics. So what I mean is, it doesn't mean you're going to be born with it. It means you're going to develop it because you've done things to yourself in your diet that create too much oxidation, and that comes from inflammation, which comes primarily from too much sugar in your diet again, and toxic exposure, and bad oils, and the fun stuff we talked about in the past, right?
Yeah.
And again, remember, all carbohydrates break down to sugar.
Yeah, they do.
All proteins break down to amino acids in sugar. All fats break down to ketones. So fats don't cause this problem. Proteins, not so much. It's carbohydrates that cause this problem. Now, not all carbohydrates are evil, right? I don't mean that, but full, normal, natural carbohydrates, vegetables and fruits in their natural form don't do this. When we take those foods and we process them into that lovely packaged food that we like to eat so much with a crunch or a snap or with a dip or whatever we're going to eat this processed simple carbohydrate gunk with, right? Simple flour, cooked.
You mean zucchini bread isn't healthy?
Well, you see, the zucchini was,
yeah.
The bread, not so much, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, we can fool ourselves in saying, oh, it's healthy. It's made from zucchini. Made from doesn't mean it is the same.
Or added to. Zucchini
Right.
is added to the stuff that isn't good for you.
I mean, let's think about it. Heroin is made from a beautiful poppy flower.
Yeah, there we go.
Right? Cocaine is made from the cocoa leaf.
Yeah.
But once you process it, it becomes something different.
Mm.
Right, Ralphie? Right. Okay.
So let's just do the high notes for people as they walk away today.
All right. I have one more thing, one more marker I was going to talk about.
Oh, okay.
If I may.
Not on my list.
Right.
Yeah,
it's called
okay.
LRA.
Oh, yes, it is on my list. We missed it. All
right.
I'm so sorry.
Well, we didn't miss it. I knew it was coming.
I went in order. Go ahead.
And I didn't actually have them in order, so I gave them to him.
It's all right. I'm just listening like everybody else. Go ahead.
So LRA stands for lymphocyte response assay.
Mm-hmm.
And lymphocytes are a kind of white blood cell, right? Mm-hmm. And this is actually a food sensitivity test. There are 4 different types of immune reaction you can have to food. Mm-hmm. A type 1 reaction is a food allergy. That's the kind of test they do with a skin test or a RAS test to see if you're allergic specifically to certain ingredients in foods. And those are measuring for, a particular kind of antibody called IgE. Mm-hmm. And IgE antibodies tend to last the longest in your body. That's why we kind of call them, the E stands for forever.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe not necessarily true. There are certain things you can do to reset your nervous system to recognize them differently. But for most people, if you develop IgE antibodies, you're pretty much going to have them for life. And they're not going to like whatever it is that they are supposed to not like. Okay. Mm-hmm. So those are the ones that lead to like an anaphylactic reaction. Yeah. Your throat swells up, you can't breathe kind of allergy. Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
Now that is easy to recognize. I eat that and I'm in serious trouble fast. I can't breathe. I break out into giant swelling rashes or whatever. Mm-hmm. So that's not the most common thing that happens, right? Type 2 antibodies and type 3 and type 4 are much more common. Type 2 is antibodies IgG, IgM, IgA. These are reactive antibodies that are short-lived. They don't stay with you for life like the IgE does. And they develop an immune response against food, but it's something that you can change. Mm-hmm. Type 3 and type 4 have to do more with the white blood cells themselves, the lymphocytes, and chemicals produced with those lymphocytes called cytokines and leukotrienes and prostaglandins, right? These are all chemical mediators that respond to inflammatory reactions in the body to fight something, right? And the immune complex, the prostaglandins, the leukotrienes, the cytokines, and the type 4, the white blood cells, the lymphocytes, those are the greatest response your body has to any food, right? So we call those food sensitivities versus true food allergies, but they can still mess you up just the same. You just don't feel it immediately, right? So when you do an LRA, lymphocyte response assay type of food sensitivity test, and it measures all of these different parameters, you can tell if your body's immune system is challenged. Because if your immune system is reacting to foods as an enemy, you got a problem, right? And the more that it reacts, the more severe the reaction into more foods, the more stress you're putting on your immune system, the less your immune system can concentrate on healing, repair, and fighting off an enemy. And therefore, your life expectancy shortens.
Okay.
Okay.
I have there's a couple questions here. I just hadn't been putting them up.
Sure.
Um, here is one. What about fasting insulin?
Yes, another great marker. And I know I didn't go into everything tonight because we only have so much time. Actually, in my practice, when I run a blood panel to look at full cell function and body function, I look at over 75 markers. We've only talked about 5 or 6 tonight. Okay. We wouldn't have enough time to go into all that. But fasting insulin is very important. Insulin, as we know, is a hormone that's necessary to tell the cells open the door and let that sugar in, right? So it doesn't sit out here and create that glycation. So if your insulin is too low, it can't get in, right? So typically we would immediately think, well, the more insulin, the better, right? Well, yes and no, because insulin does its job, but it's also damaging. So if too much insulin, just like the sugar, getting into the cell to be fed is good. Too much staying outside, not so good. The same thing with insulin. If there's too much too long and your insulin levels are high, you're going to have a rapid deterioration of your cell function. And there is very strong evidence to say that that is actually one of the main causes of cancer. Okay.
Wow.
Not just diabetes. And we see a strong correlation between diabetes and cancer, right?
Okay.
It's very common for people to develop both, right? So fasting insulin is another great marker to look at because it should be down to a certain level. If you're fasting, so there's no sugar there, the insulin should not be coming out, but the insulin appears elevated, that indicates that your body is not metabolizing your sugar properly. There is a hormone imbalance and discrepancy going on, and that's causing damage. That will also shorten your life expectancy for sure.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Now, a good way to change that is with intermittent fasting.
Yes.
Right. So when you don't present food all the time to the body can kind of re-regulate these hormone levels. Right. So intermittent fasting means eating only within like a 7 or 8 hour window in your day. So ideally, like for me, I skip breakfast. I have a cup of black coffee in the morning. No sugar sweetening. I use stevia or monk fruit in their natural state, minimally processed with no added sugars, because I like a little, yeah, Ralphie likes that too. I like a little bit of sweetness in there. I'm not a manly man. I don't like straight black coffee, right? So that is a great way to start your day without introducing sugar into your system right away, so that the healing and repair my body was doing all night while I was sleeping can continue, right? So the first time I eat every day is around 2 o'clock. And then the last time I try to eat is at the latest 9 o'clock, because I want that 7 hour window, right? But I'm typically going to be eating dinner somewhere around 7 o'clock, right? So I'm actually going to be having more like a 5 hour window for the most part. And that really helps to reset your hormones across the board and lower your inflammation. It's a great way to do that for most people. If you are already an insulin dependent diabetic, you got to do it a little bit differently. Okay. So don't just jump right into it. This is not medical advice I'm giving right now, right? This is information, and you should talk to your doctor or talk to me more directly. I'd be happy to speak to you about what might be appropriate for your situation. Again, if you go to my website, drweilcanhelp.com, I always offer a completely free 10-minute discovery call with me where you can pick my brain. I always offer that. Not as many people take advantage of it as I would like, because I make myself available, but I think people are afraid.
I did.
Reason, right? Yeah, you did.
I did. Yeah, I did. I was like, hey, hello.
Yeah,
Let's
absolutely.
chat. Yeah. Yeah, it was great.
And we found some things that we could fix, and we did it, right?
Yeah, and here we are.
And here we are.
And here we are. Yeah. No,
any other questions
I
from the audience?
There's a lot of comments, tons and tons
Okay.
and tons of comments. People agreeing with you for sure. So let's just, before we sign off, let's just quickly recap for everyone. What are some things people can do right now to extend their longevity? Okay.
Number 1, increase your omega-3 status by either eating oily fish every day in a fairly large amount, anywhere from, well, it depends, because if you don't measure it, you don't know where you're at again. So when I actually do this testing in my office, which I can do really with anyone around the country, mail you a test kit,
Yeah.
Depending on what your omega-3 status is, I may tell you to eat 3 ounces of that salmon or eat a pound of that salmon every day, right? Which is unrealistic. So I say, okay, eat it when you're going to eat it, but you're also going to need a supplement, and you're going to need this many milligrams of EPA and DHA, and you're going to need these other vitamins and minerals and nutrients because of other things we found in that test to really repair cell damage. So again, if you don't test it, you can't fix it, right? You don't know,
of course.
right? You cannot improve that which you don't measure, right? So I'm a big proponent of objective testing to see what's going on, so I know what your baseline is, and I have something to measure against as we work with an intervention, and then we see how you have improved and progressed. So we know where we're starting, we know when we're finished, right?
Yep.
So get your omega-3s through your diet and take a fish oil supplement. Come here. Oh, give me a second. Come here, buddy.
It must be dinner time.
Yeah, he needed a drink of water, but now he wants to be back in my lap. All right.
Of course.
So a basic baseline level of omega-3s in supplement form is about 2,000 milligrams of DHA and EPA a day. I have some people who need 8,000 milligrams, right? It depends on what your levels really are to make a dent in what's really going on, but safely you can take 2,000 milligrams a day. And also make sure that those fish oils are, that they've been molecularly distilled, free of PCBs, dioxins, heavy metals from the water, because again, we don't know what's in the ocean. So you gotta make sure it's properly purified for that, and high potency, right? And again, if you want information about that, again, join the Facebook group at Restore Your Health Online, reach out to me, and I'll send you a link telling you my favorite sources and where to get them, all right? Number 2, vitamin D, right? So, and again, most of the stuff that we're told to take, because it's even recognized across the board as being healthy, like vitamin D, we're typically told to take far less than is really physiologically beneficial to your body. So again, most people are told to take 2,000 IUs of vitamin D. I take 20,000 every day, right? In the spring and summer, I take 50,000 every day in the fall and winter, because your body needs that much more when you're not getting that sun exposure, right? Now, vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin, which means your body cannot flush out the excess. So it is possible to overdose, but you would need an awful lot. So I've looked at a lot of research for that. And when we look at your vitamin D levels, as I said before, how they go from 30 to 100 in your blood, doctors get concerned if it goes over 100. I've not seen a single study that did not show any true harm unless you went over 300. So you would have to take a lot to do that. Okay. So when you get your blood checked, you want your vitamin D status to be around 75. Okay. Is a real good number. All right.
Okay.
B vitamins, right?
Yeah.
It's a whole food B complex. Again, if you want help from me in where to get that, reach out to me. Okay. But nutritional yeast flakes is a great source of that. Right. And you can get that at any health food store and sprinkle it on your food.
Okay.
All right. Hemoglobin A1C, keep your sugar and simple carbs down. That's pretty much what you got to do. Right. Yeah. That's the way it works.
Yeah.
And if you already have high inflammation going on and you already have sugar problems, even complex carbs are a problem. Right. So, for example, there's more sugar in 2 slices of organic whole wheat bread than there is in a can of Pepsi.
Yeah.
All right. So if your body is operating well and you can metabolize that, great. But if you're already inflamed and damaged, that's a problem. That's a problem right there. Okay. So I recommend when someone's got suspected high inflammation, go grain-free for at least 3 months. Follow a paleo type diet, which is naturally grain-free. Grains, again, are wheat, oats, barley, rye, rice, corn, right? Any of those plants, they all convert to sugar very, very rapidly. Okay. Instead, use your root-based flours like cassava root, arrowroot, taro root, or nut-based flours like almond. Okay. So that's a far healthier choice for you. What else?
I mean, I think those are the high points without recapping the entire show, because we are coming up to 8:07.
So, and the last thing I would say is, if you've never
be careful with your water. You've got to filter your water.
Filter your water. And if you've never had food sensitivities tested, look at my face there. I'm not sure what's going on.
That's cool. We know what's going on. You did not.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Plug into your router.
I'm sorry. I will do better next time.
Thank you.
All right. Well, maybe I'll come back in time to say goodbye. We'll
um,
see.
thank you so much. It's always a pleasure. You always give us so much wonderful information. Um, and we'll be back in a month,
Yes, we
right?
will. And look, I'm back just in time to say goodbye.
Oh, look at that. That's so lovely. All right, my friend. Take care. Ralphie, see you later. And I know Knight's back there somewhere too, right?
Yep, Knight's behaving. He's over there sleeping on his bed. He's being a good guy, unlike
Okay.
this little guy.
All right. It was very nice speaking with you, and we'll chat soon, okay?
Great seeing you again, too, and I'll see you in a month.
All righty. Bye-bye now.
All right, bye-bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in to our conversation with Dr. Michael Wild. As usual, we have learned so much. If you would like more information, please visit his website at drwildcanhelp.com. And also, you can join his Facebook group, Restore Your Health Online. Sorry we went over a little bit, but I felt like the information was really important and it can help all of us live longer and healthier. So thank you so much and have a good night. Bye-bye.